Take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
So a couple things here. First of all, after Elon dropped his big bomb on Trump, accusing him of being in the Epstein files, which again is something we all already kind of knew, unless you're one of the people that kisses Trump's ring or is on his bandwagon. It's pretty open and obvious that Trump and Epstein were affiliated, and that Trump is one of the people who've benefited the most from Epstein not being able to testify, etc. So not really that big of a surprise. Elon has already deleted that tweet, meaning whatever's going on behind the scenes, he already has been scared off of the path that he was on, which was inevitable. Elon is a wimp, and just incredibly immature and childish. He's getting in fist fights behind the scenes with other members of Trump's cabinet, and he's whining and crying, and this whole Doge thing turned out to be a huge scam. But when Elon dropped this tweet, there were a couple different podcasts with members of Trump's cabinet actively happening. So in real time, you saw Kash Patel and Vance responding to what Elon said about Trump. And not like a huge, robust response. It's just kind of off the cuff, but you can see how they respond in this context, in, being put in the hot seat over something like this. Both of them kind of tried to get past and move on from the issue as soon as possible. So I'll show you a couple clips of that, and then there's also some continuing unrest happening in LA, and there's more images of that I want to show you guys at the end. So stick around for that. But first, I'll play this video of Kash Patel on the Joe Rogan podcast. Just so happened to be there when Elon dropped his big bomb tweet. So let's watch that.
This is going to come up because it's been going on since we've been recording here. Elon and Trump seem to be in a bit of a spat. Joe, you want to check the tweet that Elon just put out a little bit ago?
Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day. Jesus Christ.
I'm not participating in any of that conversation between Elon
Have
and
a
Trump.
Nice day, DJT. Someone should take his phone away.
They're going back and forth about different things.
Yeah. Listen,
Well, he said he was disappointed in Elon.
Yeah, they told him to leave.
Jesus Christ, that's a crazy thing to say. How does he know? Does he know that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files? Or does he have access to the Epstein files?
I don't know how he would, but I'm just staying out of the Trump-Elon thing. That's way outside my lane.
What the fuck are they doing?
I know my lane, and that ain't it.
I just don't... I mean, I understand he owns Twitter. I think it's bad for your mental health. I think posting things public all day and arguing with people all day is bad for you.
Well, you raise a great point. Sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Half of what we have to respond to is the click army on social media.
Right. And 50% of that plus is bots.
50% of that plus is bots, but let's take the other 50% of that. It's just constantly pushing out information to sell t-shirts or subscriptions or whatever, listen to my show. And then people are like, hey, FBI, why aren't you looking at this thing in Oklahoma? And I'm like, because it's fake. I don't have time for that. And so to your point on like social media does have a great use in terms of so the reason Dan and I don't do a lot of media is because we're the FBI. Like, let our work speak for itself.
Right.
But we have to find the right balance of going to do media and posting on social media the things we're doing and keeping people updated. And so that's the delicate balance we're trying. But what I'm learning is no matter what you do, it doesn't matter. It's going to just completely not make everyone.
So yeah, Kash Patel really just kind of wiggles right away from this. And it's interesting, they had talked about Jeffrey Epstein already earlier in this episode, and then this whole thing happened with Elon. And So a couple interesting things about his response there. First of all, he says, I'm not going to get involved in that, even though he's accusing Trump of being associated with something that Kash Patel is very much involved with. It is his job, his purview. And if there's anybody for Joe Rogan to ask about that in particular, it's Kash Patel. And he just happened to be there. And so, the entire audience of Joe Rogan was outraged, not only by the response of Kash Patel, but the fact that Joe Rogan didn't interrogate him more, because this is exactly the person you would want to have to answer questions about that in particular. Instead, he doesn't touch it. He goes back, so he stays on message. He was talking about this whole thing about 50% of the discourse is bots, and we're up against the click army, blah, blah, blah. And it was actually really interesting what he said there, because really what he's saying is the people in the right-wing sphere of information and the online investigators on the right that bubble up to news sources, they are constantly coming up with stories and different things that they want to be investigated, and the FBI doesn't have time for that shit. So he's basically saying that a lot of the grievances and the stories that come up from right-wing places and right-wing sources are bullshit. So that's something that we all know already. And it's just interesting how, this guy is, the reason he's in the position he's in is because he takes these niche fake stories, like stuff about January 6th, stuff about Trump and Russia, stuff about COVID, and he amplifies it to the maximum degree. But now that he's in the FBI, there's no way for him to do that anymore, because that's not really what his job is. His job is investigation, and there's limited resources in the government to do investigations on various things. And so he knows that certain things are bullshit, and so it doesn't make sense for him to allocate resources towards that, even if what he's doing is explicitly to pursue a Trump agenda or to whatever, legitimize Trump narratives. He still knows that he can't waste a bunch of money investigating stuff that's fake. So it's interesting that he said that in general, let alone that he connected that with Trump and Elon. But essentially all he had to say about Jeffrey Epstein is that he did kill himself. Kash Patel insists that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, and kind of goes back and forth about whether or not they're going to release tapes about it. He says, we have all these tapes. Then he says, we're not going to re-traumatize women by putting that stuff back out there. And he kind of positions that like that's the first and foremost, that's never going to happen under my watch, which is good, I guess. But also a lot of those victims want that stuff to be out there. They want people to know what's going on. And so they spent all this time talking about whether or not Jeffrey killed himself, or whether it would have been impossible to, get into this prison and kill him. He essentially just reverted immediately to the establishment narrative about Jeffrey Epstein, which is that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. It was an unfortunate coincidence. The guards just happened to fall asleep at the prison, and, he killed himself, and there's not that many more questions about it. And look, there are things we know about, like Prince Andrew and other people that have already been implicated with Jeffrey Epstein, and he essentially calls the rest of it conspiracy theories, saying that the idea that there are more people who are associated with Jeffrey Epstein, and there is evidence of that, that the public hasn't seen, he essentially calls that conspiracy theories. And so, that's what he went on the Joe Rogan Experience to do. That is establishment. That's exactly what any previous FBI head would have gone on the Joe Rogan Experience to say. And Joe Rogan pretty much just swallows it whole cloth, doesn't really gather the will to question that very much. And so, Kash Patel just kind of gets away with that. And so it really does prove that these guys are, in fact, the new establishment media. It is wild that when something like what Elon Musk said drops, not only do these guys have, these podcasts basically on speed dial, where they can go on there and launder the administration's narrative at any given point to millions of people, but also they just happen to be on these platforms when some of the biggest, one of the biggest Oppo research hits from Elon Musk, not that it's real research, but it's a big piece of information that he dropped that boom, now we're going to get the media talking about this. And just when that happens, two of Trump's lackeys just happened to be on podcasts talking about it. Now, I'm not saying that that's set up. That is a coincidence. But what's not a coincidence is the fact that they have so much, they're so well booked when it comes to these podcasts. I mean, this is the FBI director and the vice president. This is not like the press department. You know what I mean? This is random members of the administration who are booked on these podcasts. So there's no question that these guys, Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn, who I'm about to play, they represent the new establishment because, you know, these guys from the administration can go on there. They can say whatever Trump wants them to say. They dance around issues like Jeffrey Epstein, just like any other establishment media has always done. And then they don't get questioned. They don't get questioned at all. So let me play this next clip. This is JD Vance talking with Theo Vaughn. Also just happened to be doing Theo Vaughn's podcast the day this Elon Musk thing dropped. And, you know, they didn't release this episode till like a day or two later, but this is what JD Vance had to say.
Okay. Wow.
Elon Musk, time to drop the really big bomb, right? And I thought this was going to be on Iran.
So it's funny. I haven't even seen.
Right?
I haven't even seen this one.
But he goes, at real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. This is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day. Nice signature from a South African DJT.
Man. Well, here's my basic reaction to like all this stuff is look. First of all, absolutely not. Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong with Jeffrey Epstein. Like, the guy is, whatever the Democrats and the media says about him, that's totally BS. Here's my basic read on it. First of all, I'm the vice president to President Trump. My loyalties are always going to be with the president. Mm-hmm. And I think that Elon, he's an incredible entrepreneur. He's actually done, I think Doge was really good. This sort of effort to root out waste, fraud, and abuse in our country was really good. And look, man, I'm always going to be loyal to the president, and I hope that eventually Elon kind of comes back into the fold. Maybe that's not possible now because he's gone so nuclear.
Well, his feelings,
but I hope it is, man.
His
because
feelings are hurt. Why though? Do you know why?
Yeah, I mean, so look, I think number one, so Elon's new to politics, right? So his businesses are being attacked nonstop. They're literally like firebombing some of his cars. And by the way, we're looking into a lot of this stuff. I mean, some of that stuff we're looking into is an act of terrorism at the Department of Justice because I think it is an act of terrorism. So I think part of it is this guy got into politics and has suffered a lot for it. But I mean, and I get the frustration there, and I get the frustration that, I mean, look, Congress, you got the spending bill. But the main purpose of the bill is not actually spending or cutting spending, though it does cut a lot of spending. Mm-hmm. The main purpose of the bill is to prevent the biggest tax increase. But I understand, like, it's a good bill. It's not a perfect bill. Like the process in DC, if you're a business leader, you probably get frustrated with that process because it's more, bureaucratic. It's more slow moving. Yeah. But I really, man, I think it's a huge mistake.
So a little bit more of a swift movement from JD Vance there. He locks into a response and a way to paint a narrative in response pretty quickly, whereas Kash Patel kind of couldn't do anything but dance around and move beyond the issue. So JD Vance, who's really leaning into this like country boy type of affect here. I don't remember him talking like this all the time. So he's really leaning into it with Theo Vaughn here. And he says that, obviously he said Trump never did anything wrong with Epstein. Very interesting choice of words. Couple interesting choices of words from JD Vance here. He says Trump never did anything wrong with Epstein. Kind of doesn't say anything like Trump was never affiliated with Epstein. He can't say that. And then the other thing, he pivots to talking about Elon there. Another interesting choice of words. He says, I thought Doge was a good thing. Doge was a good attempt to go in and root out waste, fraud, and abuse. So it's pretty clear at this point that is not what Doge did. If that was the goal of Doge, it failed in that goal. And the best you can say is that it was a good try, good old college try. So I'm glad that after this Doge experiment, it's pretty quickly been exposed that it was a bunch of horseshit. Really, the only purpose it served was for Elon to go in there and cut some of his pet projects. And it looks like by making an enemy of the administration, he now hasn't even made progress on that because the administration's probably going to go after him 10 times harder than it was before. So that'll be entertaining to watch. And that was the last thing that JD Vance said, is that he thinks it was a mistake for Elon Musk to go after the president like that, which is true. And he will probably regret it. So, just so we're clear, the reason the Epstein files have not been released is because Donald Trump is in them. He's probably one of the main people that was being blackmailed by Jeffrey Epstein. And it's possible that that very fact is at the heart of why Trump has had such a long career in politics, so much longer of a career in politics than anyone would have expected. And I really think that his ties to Epstein are at the center of that. I think they're at the center of his influence and his leverage and the leverage that existed against him. I think the moment that Jeffrey Epstein was killed was an absolute turning point for Trump and the nation in general. And I think that he was obviously the one who was in power when Jeffrey Epstein was killed. So if there's anybody that you look to that had a reason to want Jeffrey Epstein gone, was able to pull it off when it happened, it's Donald Trump. And the only reason any of those guys are in place in the first place is because they're willing to lie to you about it. So anyway, in LA, just to quickly update on some of the things that are going on there, continued unrest. People are not happy with ICE and the Fed's presence in LA. A couple raids in LA of warehouses and places where migrants were working led to some pretty fast and pretty strong community responses in various parts of the city. So throughout the day on Friday, you saw different events cropping up of either protests or people clashing with the feds, people clashing with the police, and that continued on Saturday. You see more feds being released here in like their military garb, and you see the sort of military formations that they're doing here. This is getting a little bit of coverage on the news, but not a lot. There's a lot of people who aren't aware that this is happening, and you're essentially seeing an increased police presence in response to this. Now, the administration has said that they want 2,000 National Guard troops in LA, and supposedly they have sent those. Now, the city has said they don't want the troops. The state says they don't want the troops, and there has been a little bit of back and forth that I've seen in terms of where they're at, if they're there. This was announced during the day on Saturday that 2,000 troops were going to be sent there, and from then I didn't hear anything else about it. We have not seen National Guard troops being rolled out onto the streets as of yet, but apparently they're supposed to be there for 90 days. That's the assignment that they've been given, so it's possible that they just have not actually deployed them yet, but they're here, they're preparing their setting up their home base, wherever that may be. So that is kind of the status of things right now. There are a couple events that are planned for Sunday that I'm going to post some information to here. If you're in LA, you should try to show up to those. And be careful about passing around information about this, but we should also spread the word as discreetly as we can. And before I go here, I just want to play a couple more pieces of footage that show a little bit of community resistance against some of these ICE agents and cops in general. And you can see that there's some real resistance happening. People are not having it with these feds. So in this first clip that I'm going to play, this guy sees some ICE officers setting up. This is a union carpenter, and he sees that people in his community are being threatened by a couple ICE vehicles that are in the area, and so he calls them out. Let's watch that real quick.
What are you guys doing here? Now, hold on.
Fuck you, motherfuckers! Get the fuck out of here! You my fucking people,
Hey! I'm a U.S. citizen! I don't want to see your guys around here, right? Get the fuck out of here right now! I got a lot of people coming right now, you understand? We don't want you guys here. Don't worry about it. I'm a U.S. military. I know what's up. Yeah, all right, we're watching you. Mind you, I live right around the block. I know where the fuck.
So that was beautiful. You can see they don't quite retreat, but he puts them on the back foot there. In other words, they're not, when they're doing this sort of thing where they're setting up, they're not necessarily expecting to be confronted, and it's not a good thing. When you see these guys and you blow their cover and you make a lot of noise about the fact that they're there, that's not good. That doesn't help them. So keep that in mind. And then here is a woman who is talking to a local member of the police department, the LAPD, who is working with ICE, and she is scolding him. This is a Hispanic police officer, and he is being scolded by this Hispanic woman for assisting ICE. Let's listen to that.
Sobre la colonización y cómo está siendo parte de la colonización en este momento. Eres una vergüenza como hombre, machista y racista, jugándole al juego de esta gente blanca. ¿Te crees que te van a venir a proteger? Eres una vergüenza para la comunidad, una vergüenza.
So unfortunately, I can't translate that for you, but she's scolding him here for assisting ICE when he is a member of the community, and he is also Hispanic. And here in this last footage, we see that the police are retreating for the night and they're leaving. So this is the last update that I heard from the protests in LA, although there were a couple other things happening. And like I said, there's more to go on Sunday. So we'll keep an eye on whether these 2,000 National Guard troops show up. If they do, things could escalate quite a bit. But National Guard is also not necessarily trained to escalate. So it's possible that the effect that they'll have is going to be more of a presence rather than inciting conflict. But as we've seen with these protests in the past, a lot of times increased police presence, especially militarized police presence, does lead to escalation of conflict. And it's very likely that with the Trump administration, that is the point. So LA is not backing down. And I think the Trump administration is probably more likely to back down first, the way things are looking so far. But that is not a sure thing. So we'll keep an eye on it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support this channel. I'm posting different kinds of exclusive content there, like podcasts that don't make it to the main channel. Also music. I've got a new EP out right now called Dead Internet Theory, which is now available on all platforms. And that was available first for members only. I also re-released a previous EP called Spaceman Spliff. That's available now on the main channel with a bonus track included. And that was also available first for members only. So if you're interested in early access to music and other things like that, go ahead and become a member. And if there's other types of content that you'd like to see as exclusive content, let me know and we'll figure some things out.